Now, I had mentioned that you want to keep an awareness for those symptoms in whether you're the patient or family member or caregiver of a patient. And this is really important because research tells us that caregivers or spouses or family members of ICD patients tend to have just as much psychological trouble after the implant as the patients do, sometimes more. So you remember the big 5 things I mentioned? Anxiety, depression, anger, isolation, conflict. Caregivers of ICD patients often experience that at higher rates, even than patients do themselves. So some of the concerns you caregivers may have, certainly just taking on that caregiver role. I mean, it's taxing to be taking care of someone, worrying for them sometimes. You know, sometimes we tend to worry more than the patient does. Maybe you're uncertain about shock too. You're just as scared about it as the patient is. Role changes, you know, maybe sometimes patients who get an ICD can't do the job that they used to do. And so you now have to take on that responsibility of being the breadwinner or something. Sex, driving, we talked about those. I think it's really important for us to remember that when any diagnosis happens, it happens to a family. You know, it doesn't affect one person in isolation. Families really do function as teams, and when one member of our team is struggling with something, we all take on that work. We're all vulnerable to that stress. And with ICD patients, sometimes we see that the family's even more concerned about the recovery process than the patient is. The family's more nervous about what do we do about shock. You know, the family's just kind of more into it than the patient has kind of moved on from it. And unfortunately, we don't always acknowledge that. We don't always give enough information to you family members. One thing we've seen clinically is that after surgery or after a shock experience, the patient recovers and bounces back more quickly than the caregiver does. And I'll never forget, I had this one patient who had sudden cardiac arrest outside the hospital, and thankfully paramedics got there quickly, and he was resuscitated and went to the hospital and got an ICD. And his wife had kind of witnessed all of this happening and, you know, just felt helpless. And so a few months later, I saw them both, and he is doing great. You know, he's telling me, I am so happy to be alive. You know, this is my second chance. I'm so happy to have this device, and I feel great. I'm doing everything I want to do. And I looked at his wife and said, well, how are you doing? And she kind of teared up and she said, of course I'm so happy that he's still here and I understand how serious this is and I'm glad that he feels as good as he feels. But, you know, I wake up 10 times every night and feel his back to see if he's breathing. And I remember standing there helpless as I saw him unconscious. And I remember sitting in the waiting room wondering, what does this mean for us? Is he going to be okay? What is this recovery going to be like? And just having, you know, feeling totally helpless. And she is left with kind of replaying that. He doesn't remember a lot of that. You know, a lot of times the patient who went through all that wasn't aware that all that was happening. And so they don't have the after effects. So that often falls on you caregivers. And so it's important to keep an awareness of that as a caregiver, you may have more of this burden and you really, really need to be taking care of yourself throughout this process. Now, one thing that happens when a spouse or family member is sick is that someone in the family becomes the health police. Women, we love to be the health police, right? We like to be in charge of the medications. You need to stop eating fried chicken. You need to get your butt on the treadmill. I mean, we're all over it. We often become the ones who are concerned with what do we do now? What do I need to manage? Who do I need to get advice from? When are you going to take your medicines? All of that. Now, I'm not saying only women play that role, but typically most ICD patients are male and most women end up in that role. And it's no wonder that almost 70% of women caregivers end up getting symptomatic. They get depressed, anxious, resentful, exhausted, because playing that role is extremely draining. I mean, it can take every ounce of energy you have. You know, when you're taking care of someone else, you tend to kind of neglect yourself. And that's why caregiver self-care is so very important. I really encourage you guys, if somebody in your family has gotten an ICD and they've been told, well, here are the changes you need to make. You need to stop smoking. You need to exercise more or whatever. If you make those changes together, you're both going to benefit. Obviously, you're both more likely to stick with those changes, but also emotionally, it's going to be beneficial for both of you. Now, I always tell caregivers, y'all have got to get your oxygen. And I say that because I always think about, if you've ever been on a plane and they do the safety talk and they tell you, if we lose cabin pressure, oxygen masks are going to fall from the ceiling. And if you're seated next to somebody who needs help with their mask, be sure you put yours on first and then help them. And for so long, I would sit there and think, that is really mean. And I don't understand why that's the rule. Like, why wouldn't you help the person who needs help and then worry about yourself? But obviously it makes sense. If you're trying to help people all around you and you're not getting any oxygen, you're going to be useless pretty soon, right? So that's what I mean by get your oxygen. Put your needs first sometimes. What does that mean? It means pay attention to your own health. Don't neglect the things you know are healthy for you. Get enough sleep. Get your exercise. Eat well. Engage in hobbies. Spend time by yourself. Spend time with your friends without your spouse. Sometimes ICD patients, the spouses stop doing that. I mean, I've had several patients tell me, well, I used to play bridge, but then my husband got an ICD, so. And I'm like, so what? Well, I don't want to leave him alone. I'm thinking, he is so much safer now that he has an ICD than he was before. I mean, thank goodness we knew he needed one, and now he's got that personal paramedic squad implanted in his chest. He's safer now than anybody. I mean, those of y'all who have ICDs are safer than any of the rest of us in this room because you're constantly protected by that. So it can feel hard to kind of leave and separate, but it's really beneficial. It kind of restores you as a caregiver. So we talked about the fact that your ICD can do a lot of things besides shock. It can deliver painless therapy. It can allow you to get your heart rate up to a healthy level. We want you to be able to do pretty much whatever you want to do. It's normal to struggle after implant. It's normal to struggle after a shock experience. It can take a while to accept the fact that this is a part of your life, but what we know is that the vast majority of patients do accept that. And I can't tell you how many patients have told me, I don't even notice this thing anymore. For some of y'all who just got the device and it's sticking out of your chest and you look at it and feel it all the time, I know it's hard to believe me, but I promise you that that's true. It kind of becomes part of what you live with. It's your new normal, So those transient feelings of anxiety and depression can be very, very normal for you as a patient and for you guys as caregivers as well. Some solutions to that to kind of take back a feeling of control over the situation. Make a shock plan. And Frankie and I have talked about this. She's got resources for y'all. She can help you do that. I think it's a great idea. It really kind of gets the family on board and makes you feel prepared and in control of that. Learn all you can about your device. Knowledge really is power, and you understand why you even need this thing and what exactly does it do. Ask questions. Come into meetings like this is a wonderful step towards that. Talking to other patients and caregivers is, I think, one of the best things you can do. I mean, I can stand up here all day long and tell you what the research says, but I don't have an ICD. I haven't lived it. And y'all are often each other's best resources. And no matter what, know that what you're feeling is normal. Know that somebody in this room has probably felt exactly the same way. And it's all a normal part of this process. Now, I said earlier that somewhere around 70% of ICD patients report, I did have some coping struggles in the beginning. I had some negative feelings. But research also tells us that about 70% of patients within 3 years say, heart disease has in some way improved my life. Learning that I had heart disease has made me a better person somehow. And I've talked to a lot of patients about this and kind of wondered, why is that? And the consensus I get is that sometimes it serves as a wake-up call for people. It serves as, some patients say it feels like a second chance. I don't know if you like that language or not, but I think that's something for all of us to think about, being thankful for every day. If this is your wake-up call, how are you gonna respond to it? Maybe you want to be a more forgiving person. Maybe you just want to be more mindful day to day of the good stuff in your life. I think, especially these days, there's so much negative stuff everywhere we look. People losing jobs, all that stuff. It's easy to focus on that. But remembering to focus on the positive. Absolutely remember to take care of yourself, get your oxygen as you are taking care of other people, and absolutely cherish each other, which you guys do, because you're here, you're each other's best support, and I want to thank you for being here, and I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all have.